Okay, so now we're going to look at passages from two or three meditations. And again, the idea is giving you food for thought. I'm not explaining to you the purpose of the meditations overall or showing you how it all connects. Rather, we're looking for some big ideas and themes that have to do with my overall vision for this unit, which has to do with whether or not we can be 100% certain that any or at least some of our beliefs are true, and why we might want to be concerned with that. In the previous meditation, we recalled a lesson from the Learn Smart assignment. That Descartes is very concerned about whether or not we can be certain that our beliefs are true. He's especially concerned with whether or not beliefs that are shaped by the discipline of science can be counted on as true. So he's definitely interested in certainty. He doesn't think we can have knowledge without certainty. And of course, I want you to be thinking about what you did in task one for this week. And I want you to be thinking about why we might be concerned with the philosopher's concern with certainty, given what's going on with COVID-19 and all the debates and arguing that's going on right now about COVID-19, the true reality of COVID-19, and how some people seem to be very certain that their beliefs count as knowledge, that they're truly corresponding with reality, and how some people are questioning those and whatnot. So let's go ahead and start this lesson, this part of the lecture then. So I will suppose, okay, so this is meditation 2. He's taking up where he left off from meditation 1, where he's dismantled his knowledge structure because it could be that he has false beliefs. He definitely thinks he has cast doubt on all of his beliefs by attacking major sources of beliefs, reason, and experience. Therefore, he is recounting how he did that, and he's beginning in meditation 2 his project, his methodological skepticism, applying, making sure that he is thoroughly, thought through the process. And again, I want you, and I also want you to notice in us looking at this, how he's showing us his rationalism. Right now, he's just using his mind to think through ideas and concepts to figure out what he might know using just his mind. And so he continues on, picks up, with his skepticism, his methodological skepticism as a rationalist, and he wants to make sure that he hasn't missed anything in his quest for certainty. And so he says, this is the second paragraph of meditation 2, and one thing that it might help you to realize is that the title of meditation 2, and this is a translation, so I'm going to give you one translation of it, is that, so here for the title, you might want to write here, is that the title is The Nature of the Human Mind and How It Is Better Known Than the Body. So one thing to know then from just the title of the chapter is that you can see just in the title of the chapter that is the meditation. I'm going to use chapter and meditation interchangeably. The whole work is called the Meditations. It's actually longer, the title's longer. But then he calls each chapter what we might call a chapter a meditation. So again, the title of this second meditation is The Nature of the Human Mind and How It Is Better Known Than the Body. Just right there, we see that in this meditation, he claims to have found his first item of knowledge because he says better known, or at least we have reason to think that he will. Better known, remember for him, certainty or uncertainty and doubt is incompatible with knowing something, but in the title, he seems to suggest that perhaps he's going to tell us he finally has found something that he's certain about. So he says, again, picking up from where he left off in meditation 1, I will suppose then that everything is spurious. I will believe that my memory tells me lies, and that none of the things that it reports ever happened. I have no senses, and that meaning he has no body, shape, extension, movement, and place are all chimeras. So what remains? Perhaps just one fact, that nothing is certain. So there again, you see that word, right? So he's picking up with his quest for certainty. Going back to the lecture, I said level 1 concept that we're concerned with is knowledge. Level 2 is certainty. Now, moving on to here, yet apart from everything I have just listed, how do I know that there is not something else which does not allow even the slightest occasion for doubt? Is there not a God, or whatever I may call him, who puts these very thoughts in me? Okay, so this is very interesting. So right here, he's hopeful. He's like, maybe there's something that I missed in my mind that is when he says does not allow even the slightest occasion for doubt. Maybe there's something that passes the test of doubt, that pass the test of a skeptical attack that is in fact indubitable. So he's hopeful right here. But then he counters this question of possibility and hope with the question of skepticism. Pessimist. Is there not a God or whatever I may call him who puts these thoughts I am now having? Okay. But why do I think this? Since I myself perhaps may be the author of these thoughts. So maybe there's some hope again in this question, in his search for certainty, and maybe something that can count as an item of knowledge. In that case, am I not at least something? Oh, we're getting helpful. We're getting helpful. Perhaps I am certain of something. But I have just said that I have no senses and no body. What follows from this? Okay, again, Descartes is being skeptical, so that you can see that he's going back and forth between being hopeful. Oh, maybe I found a belief that can count as an item of knowledge. Maybe it's level. Maybe I'm certain about it, and then he raises a skeptical objection to it. So again, he's continuing on ruthlessly, relentlessly with his methodological skepticism. By the way, other words that have been used to describe his skepticism, or other ways that it has been framed, includes the phrase hyperbolic skepticism or radical skepticism. It's universal, it's consistent, it's thorough. He says, am I not so bound up with a body and with the senses that I cannot exist without them? Oh, so now he's kind of wondering again, maybe a little bit of hope. Well, okay, so you got to remember that he has dismantled all beliefs based on experience, so they have to do with the senses. So he's not even willing to believe that he has a physical body. But now he's wondering, well, maybe I ultimately have some form of existence that is not completely dependent on a physical body. And I'm not even willing to admit that there's a physical body right now because I've dismantled all beliefs and opinions or put them on hold, by destroying them and casting doubt on them in Meditation 1. And so what we're seeing here then is Descartes' dualism. So dualism is a metaphysical position that asserts that reality is comprised of two radically distinct kinds of substance. And I believe you might have read about this in the reading that introduced you to a focused exploration of metaphysics. So the dualist believes that that reality, including humans, are comprised of two kinds of reality. Humans, as part of reality, are comprised of an immaterial substance, which is not subject to the laws of physics. Some people, it's an immaterial substance. I hope I said that. So, wait a minute. Let me backtrack. I am so sorry. So the body is a material substance. It's composed of physical matter, physical energy, and is subject to causal laws. The self, the true self, is an immaterial kind of thing. It is not subject to causal laws necessarily. Some people refer to it as the mind or reason. I think an even better way for me to articulate that, I don't know, I stumbled over that so much, is that what we're getting at with Descartes is a view of dualism that he thinks that many philosophers think apply to reality generally, that he thinks definitely applies, or he's beginning to think applies to humans at least, and that is that with materialism, the idea is that there is only one kind of stuffs in the universe, one kind of substance, physical matter, physical energy. Then there's dualism, which says actually there's two kinds of stuff in the universe, two kinds of substances. Yes, there is material matter, physical energy, but there's also immaterial matter. And you can refer to that as, insofar as it pertains to human beings, as mind or reason or soul or spirit. So I'm willing to bet that a lot of you are actually dualist when it comes to human reality, at least. You believe that we're comprised of two radically distinct kinds of entities, the physical matter, the physical human body, and the immaterial matter that is a spirit, soul, mind, or reason. Okay, so I had to do a little bit of metaphysics there to help you understand what he's up to in his epistemological thinking here. So that's, and I started that part of the lecture when I said, but I have convinced myself, am I not so bound up with the body and with the senses that I cannot exist without them? So he's wondering, well, maybe I can exist in a form that is independent of a physical body. Maybe there's something that's more essential or ultimate to me. So he's hopeful here. But then again, we get skepticism. So he's being ruthless. He's being relentless. but I have convinced myself that there is absolutely nothing in the world, no sky, no earth, no minds, and not even bodies, meaning human bodies, much less minds. Does it not follow that I too do not exist? If I did convince, okay, so now he's being skeptical, so maybe I'm just being deceived that I exist, but I don't really exist. If I convince myself of something, then I certainly existed. Oh, well, now he seems to be making a claim with certainty, right? Then he goes on to say, but there's a deceiver of supreme power and cunning who is deliberately and constantly deceiving me. Okay, so he seems to want to assert this is true right here. He seems to want to claim this as an item of knowledge, that it's withstanding the doubt that he has been going through in this paragraph. But then, again, being ruthless, he is applying skepticism again. There's a deceiver of supreme power and cunning who's deliberately and constantly deceiving me. In that case, I too undoubtedly exist. Whoa. So he's saying, hey, even if someone's trying to deceive me, then actually that makes me even more certain that the belief that I exist cannot be doubted. Then he gives his reasons. He finishes his conditional. If he is deceiving me, and let him deceive me as much as he can, he will never bring it about that I am nothing, so long that I think that I am something. So after considering everything very thoroughly, I must finally conclude that this position, I exist, is necessarily true whenever it is put forward by me or convinced in my mind, or conceived in my mind. So how do we know that he thinks he has reached a view or an opinion that he has discovered his first item of knowledge? Where do you see a conclusion? What conclusion indicators do you see in this last sentence right here? So, right? And then what else does he say? I must finally conclude that this proposition, I exist, is necessarily true whenever it is put forward to me or conceived by my mind. Notice, he doesn't think his existence is proved by pinching his body or having other people say, hey, do you see me? Do I exist? No, it's him thinking about all the concepts that he raised in virtue of asking these questions and the logic that he went through in thinking through all the concepts in virtue of asking all these questions, that he arrives at the conclusion that this conclusion, that I exist, is a belief that counts as an item of knowledge precisely because it has withstood all the skeptical objections raised in the form of questions in the same paragraph. All right, so now we're going to look at I'm going to have to change the formatting here a little bit, maybe. Yes, no, I'm going to have to do another video just because no, I'm not. I'm going to do it like this. So you'll just have to make sure that you follow along with this in the formatted version that you have if I have not reformatted it. So I might have had time to reformat before you get to this. Okay, so, and you can reformat this also, actually, because I presented this handout to you in Word, so then you can just make sure that your sentences end here. So what I have here for you is a way of getting at Descartes' thinking thus far in this meditation, and this is as far as we will get in this meditation, by the way. And it's comprised of, the sentences here comprise a complex argument. So you should be looking at your week 3 notes on complex and simple arguments. I'm going to leave it up to you to make sure you know where to bracket and number things, but I do want you to clarify this argument. Let's just take a look at it. An evil genius is deceiving me right now, and I want you to have an understanding that this is pulled from what we just read, and it's an interpretation of what is going on in his thinking there. An evil genius is deceiving me right now. So that, remember that the universal falsifier that you read about when you were learning about skepticism, when you were doing the Learn Smart reading? That's what this is serving as. The evil genius is a universal falsifier. So he says, an evil genius is deceiving me right now. Deception requires thinking. Hence, I am thinking right now. Thinking entails existence, so it follows that if I'm being deceived right now, I should have not have that there. Then there is no doubt that I exist. And then you can see I pulled out from that passage. Thus, after everything has been most carefully weighed, It must be finally established this pronouncement, I am, I exist, is necessarily true every time I utter it or conceive it in my mind. So you'll notice that this sentence is a little bit different from this sentence, and that's because philosophers get translated. And so more than likely here we've got a translation from the Latin version because he wrote his stuff in Latin. And so there's a slight difference. I'm pulling this one from another version of Descartes that I've used. This is a slightly different translation, but they're basically saying the same thing. So for this one, you see thus after everything has been carefully weighed, it must finally be established. So that's a a conclusion indicator. Keep in mind that here in this version, it says, so after, okay, I must finally conclude. I don't want to actually say anything about that version. In this version, I want to say that it must finally be established. Some of you might want to read that as an assurance, but it's not. It's actually a conclusion indicator, so you would still cross it out. Let's see. I'm going to give you some hints. Every single statement in this argument is necessary. There's no irrelevant. There's no statements that are merely contextual or start functioning as discounts or premise or conclusion indicators in and of themselves. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's at least 6 statements, maybe exactly 6 statements. I definitely give you the final conclusion last. And there are 2 sub-conclusions. So those are the clues that I will give you. So one thing I want you to keep in mind is that for him, this is his first item of knowledge, that he exists. What he exists as, he goes on to talk about in the rest of meditation 2, that he exists as a thinking thing. That means that he does not yet affirm that he exists as a physical body in any form yet. He doesn't affirm that until meditation 6. Just briefly, in the rest of meditation 2, he goes on to consider, he goes on to talk about how he wants to affirm that a piece of wax seems to remain the same with itself as it changes from a solid, durable, hard entity into a melted entity with a different shape and smell and texture. And the basic thing that he's doing with that in the second part of meditation is just he's showing how he is someone who believes in a priori justification, a priori thinking, and that is that the way that the mind understands that the candle that was once upright, cylindrical, had a smell and was firm and had a particular shape, how it can be one and the same thing as something that has lost its smell and is now like a puddle, maybe even an in-between stage, still a little bit liquidy or mushy. The way the brain or mind understands that is still one and the same entity is through the human mind, and it's a power to discern that it is still the same entity, despite the fact that so many of its sensible qualities have changed. And so that's the significance of the wax example and the second part of the meditation. This meditation, he does not go on to affirm that the candle is really existing as a physical entity. He does not go on to say that he exists physically. He's just going into how he endorses a priori justification. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to this part then. So this is meditation 3, and we're not paying attention to so much in meditation 2. So even though we are getting into some detail about his original text, I want you to realize that we are focusing only on some things. But I do invite you to think about, your level of certainty. I wish I had done this. I should have, but in task 1, I should have asked you to rank your belief about your own existence. I should have put I exist, as in you, the student. Do you think that that is something that you cannot doubt? And even if you can doubt it, do you think that the more you doubt your own existence, the more you actually see that it withstands that doubt? The idea being that that which doubts cannot not exist. In other words, nothing that does not exist is doubting, right? Doubting entails existence. Does this seem certainly true to you? And does this lead you to think that you can be certain about your own existence in some form, in some way? Interesting that for Descartes, this is the first item that he discovers. Okay, so now we're at meditation 3. And interestingly enough, the title of meditation 3 is Of God That He Exists. And this is very interesting because this epistemological project is to save knowledge from the fires of skepticism, in particular science. And it seems like he's got a metaphysical project going on in Meditation 3. Why is there so much metaphysics? And he was actually critiqued by many empiricists for being so metaphysical in what's supposed to be an epistemological project. Well, there's actually an epistemological reason for him wanting to prove that God exists. For right now, I just want you to think about, do you think that there is a necessary connection between the word God referring to something real and whether or not genuine knowledge is possible, whether or not justified true belief is possible, whether or not we can be certain that any of our beliefs are true? I might have you write about this either in your week 10 assignment or even in this Blackboard created review. So this is a really interesting passage. So let's look at it because it plays a pivotal role in his thinking, in his quest for certainty. And in a way, in terms of what I'm interested in, everything that we've been talking about is leading up to this. So we're in Meditation 3. The only thing he claims that counts as knowledge, or as the one belief that has at least explicitly survived skepticism, is I think I exist, what is called the cogito elsewhere. So belief in his own existence, that he exists, counts as its first item of knowledge. And it forms the foundational base of his knowledge structure that he will rebuild to save science. So he says in Meditation 3, and you might want to write that title that I gave you of God, that he exists. Again, that's based on one translation of his text. And usually the translations, they're like 70 to 90% aligned, just maybe things are phrased in a different order or a word is changed, a synonym or whatnot. In these few words, I have reviewed everything I truly know, or at least what so far I have noticed that I know. This is very interesting. So notice what he says, reviewed everything that I truly know. So think about this. Are there things that you think you know that you don't actually know? So can you think you have knowledge that you don't know is not knowledge? This is very interesting. I want to tie it back to intellectual humility. So remember, intellectual humility is awareness of the need to and ability to admit the limits of one's own knowledge, right? That our knowledge is limited, that we don't know everything. Now, when we think about everyday life or common sense, we can all agree probably that there are things that not, when we're not bogged down by the problems of epistemology, that there are things that we know that we know. So common sense wise, we know that we know we are listening to Dr. C use the word know many times. There are things that common sense wise, we know we don't know. So we know that we don't know the ages of the professor's children, that is me, Dr. C's children. You know that you don't know that, common sense wise. But then, of course, there are things that you don't know. And I think I might have even lectured on this a little bit at the beginning of the semester. But the things that you don't know is, for example, something that you didn't know until right this instance is that I have 3 grandchildren. You didn't know that until I told you. So that means those are just things that you're ignorant about, that you have no knowledge of. Now, what's interesting here is that Descartes is saying, I have reviewed everything I truly know, or at least what so far I have noticed that I know. So are there things that you might know that you don't know that you know? This might make you think about what you learned about innate ideas. We're not really focusing on innate ideas, though I have in the past. I love to look at the philosophers' debate about that, but that doesn't go with my vision for this last unit and making it more personal and reflective for you. So what he's telling us here is like, I have reviewed, I think I have at least one item of knowledge. Perhaps there's other items. Maybe I missed something, or maybe there's other items of knowledge that I can affirm. So then he says, now I will ponder more carefully to see whether perhaps there may be other things belonging to me until now I have failed to notice. He doesn't mean belonging to his existence like a physical body and senses. He means belonging to his mind. Are there ideas in his mind or beliefs in his mind that he doesn't know are in there, that through a priori thinking he might discover count as knowledge? So he says, okay, so this right here, these 2 sentences right here are contextual. They're important. They include fundamental and powerful concepts, but basically he's just reviewing, where he's at, and he is getting ready to give us an argument. But the first 2 sentences, the first 2 statements are just contextual. He says, I am certain that I am a thinking thing. Whoa. Okay, so here you see him applying that level 2 concept that we're concerned with, certainty, right? I am certain that I am a thinking thing. If he is saying that, he's saying that the claim, I am a thinking thing, is expressing a belief that counts as knowledge. Why? Because it is something that he is certain about. Now, what I want you guys to realize is that you cannot interpret I am certain that as an assurance, as excess verbiage. Certainty is the is a major concept itself. It's not being used to state his confidence, only psychological confidence. The concern is with certainty. Do I have a belief that rises to the level of certainty? And here in this statement, that's what he's telling us that he does. So this whole thing, this third sentence, this third statement cannot be, no part of it can be crossed out because it's about him being certain about a belief. If you take out that certain part, then he's just asserting something, but you've left out the part where he's saying, I'm certain about it. So then he says, but do I not know therefore, oh, look at that, that's lovely. Okay, I copied and pasted this from a translation in, no, actually, yes, I did, from the internet, and it was spelled that way. Do I not therefore know, do I not therefore also know what is required of me to be certain of anything? Oh, so he's saying, okay, notice how he's going through his logic. So I'm certain that I'm a thinking thing. Maybe I have figured out how to be certain of things. Notice that he's thinking of drawing a conclusion, but he hasn't yet. This is a question, so he's not making a statement. He's not putting forth a claim. He's wondering, what can I do with this item of knowledge here? Does it take me anywhere else with respect to my goal of saving knowledge from skepticism and saving science? So then he says, surely, in this first instance of knowledge, and this should be a little t right there. In this first instance of knowledge, there's nothing but a certain clear and distinct perception of what I affirm. So, surely that would function as an assurance. He says, in this first instance of knowledge, there is nothing but a certain, this is interesting, the translations and the punctuation they do. I'm cleaning it up for you for today's standards of writing mechanics and punctuation. Surely in this first instance of knowledge, there's nothing but a certain clear and distinct perception of what I affirm. Okay, so now he is continuing on with his reasoning. So we can see here that a really important term here is what? A clear and distinct perception. So clarity and distinctness is going to have something to do with what he can be certain about and what he can claim as knowledge, right? So he says, in this first instance of knowledge, what is he talking about there? The first instance of knowledge is what? I am a thinking thing. So that's what he means there. So instead of saying in this first instance of knowledge, we could say, in my knowledge that I am a thinking thing, there is nothing but a clear and distinct perception of what I affirm. Yet, this would hardly, yet is kind of like and. So he's continuing on with his thinking. This would hardly be enough to render me certain of the truth of a thing if it could ever happen that something I perceived so clearly and distinctly were false. And thus, I now seem able to posit as a general rule that everything I very clearly and distinctly perceive is true. So as you can see, he has reached a conclusion here. And the conclusion is that he has found a rule. And again, he thinks he has done this through a priori means. He thinks that his mind has presented to him through his a priori thinking entailed in this argument that there is a rule that he can use. So this itself is, he believes, an item of knowledge. There is a rule that I can use to decide when a belief can count as an item of knowledge. And he derives this from what he thinks is his first item of knowledge, that is, that he's a thinking thing, something that he is certain about. So now what I want to do is, okay, so I will have you clarify this argument. I've given you clues as to what's contextual, what is not excess verbiage. One thing that I want to point out at this point is I don't know why a lot of you did this, but a lot of you, I've seen more students not bracketing and numbering all statements. If you go back to your examples from week 3, I told you that you bracket and number all statements, and I warned you. I said, even if you cross out an entire statement because it's irrelevant, it's a discount, or the entire statement is a premise or conclusion indicator, I said you still bracket and number it because of what I told you to write down. Bracket and number all statements. But what I saw a lot of people doing in a recent assignment is that people are bracketing and numbering only things that count as a premise or a conclusion. So I don't know what happened because people did better with that on the second argument clarification. I know I had put in a Blackboard, a created review, a true false item that said you should like bracket and number only statements that function as a premise or a conclusion, or I said, which it would be false, and or I said, if a statement is excess verbiage, you don't bracket or number it. That's false. Some people, I think, did not look at their notes from week 3, and so they got that wrong. And because they said that they got those wrong, they formed incorrect beliefs. So make sure you're not repeating that mistake with this here. But now what I want to do is look at the concepts here. So I'm not going to focus on the excess verbiage here or the contextual information. Let's focus here. So certainty, if we were to highlight key concepts here in this passage, what would they be? Certain, right? Certain again in the question. Of course, we wouldn't bracket and number that. Then we've got what? Knowledge. What would be words that you would need to highlight here? Certain, again. But now we have 2 fundamental and powerful new words that are being introduced here. What are they? Clear and distinct. So clear means that the idea or the belief is available to your mind such that you can inspect all of its parts, all of its components. So it's like you're able to look at it through a magnifying glass, something that's very small, you cannot see all its parts clearly. You put it under a magnifying glass and then you can see all its parts. So like let's say a cell. We can't really make sense of a cell with the human eye, right? If it in its true reality. We have to blow it up or put it under a microscope and take a picture of it to see all its parts. That's what he means by clear. You can see all the parts of something, an idea, a belief, or whatnot. Distinct means that you can tell where one idea or belief begins and where another one begins. In other words, you can separate them. So you can see how maybe the parts of your idea of certainty, right, the parts of your ideas of knowledge, what each of those parts are, but then you can also see how they are distinct concepts, and then even then better understand because you can clearly see all their parts and see them as individual things, you can still see better how they connect. Okay, so then clear and distinct perception. Then here, what would you see? There are 2 words that name fundamental and powerful concepts. One's repeated, one is one that we've mentioned, but we haven't mentioned yet in this paragraph. What about in this line? So there's a new word that we highlighted, 2 new words in this passage with respect to what we've been focusing on. What would you say are words that are fundamental and powerful concepts? 2 words here. One word is a synonym or the opposite of the other word, so we'd still mark it. But there's 2 words here. And then here we would have a new one, which is a rule, this idea of an epistemological rule as to when we can claim something counts as knowledge. And then here, we would have what? There would be 3 more words that you would highlight as fundamental and powerful concepts. Okay, so I'm going to stop this video because it's already 30 minutes. When we return to the next video, we're going to look at the epistemological moves being made here, and then we're going to wrap up. That will bring us to the end of meditation 3. We're not going to deal with meditation 5. That is something that we don't need to concern ourselves with for the vision of my class. And then meditation 6, we're just going to look at this argument very briefly. So we're almost done with this part of the lecture series.